The Commanders hopefully have their franchise quarterback,
I'm on that good cushion alcohol.
Jayden Daniels. One of the biggest stories this offseason has been who Washington would draft second overall at the 2024 NFL Draft. Caleb Williams to the Bears at 1 was pretty much a given. That left a decision between Drake May or Jayden Daniels. But it sounds like J.J. McCarthy was more likely than May. The pick was Jayden, and while I did prefer May, it's hard to blame general manager Adam Peters for going with Jayden Daniels. He was the best player in college football last season without a doubt. Jayden was must-watch TV. He had 50 total touchdowns, 40 passing, 10 rushing, 3,800 passing yards, 1,100 rushing yards, and only 4 interceptions. He won the Heisman Trophy. Daniels was a 5-year starter, is the only player to pass for 12,000 yards and rush for 3,000 yards in a career, and became the only player to pass for over 350 yards and rush for over 200 yards in a game last season against Florida. The season before he won the Heisman was his first at LSU under Brian Kelly. He had 2,900 yards, 17 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and rushed for 900 yards and 11 touchdowns. Yes, he was good, but it was nothing compared to 2023. Before he was in Baton Rouge, Jayden was at Arizona State, where he started as a true freshman for Herm Edwards. He passed for 2,900 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, plus 355 yards and 3 touchdowns rushing. ASU only played 4 games during COVID. Jayden had 700 yards, 5 touchdowns, an interception, 200 rushing yards, and 4 rushing touchdowns. His last season in Tempe was his worst. Jayden had 2,400 yards, 10 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 700 yards, and 6 touchdowns rushing. Jayden Daniels is an elite athlete. He has a great deep ball, and he can create in the pocket. The two things that every team wants in a quarterback. I like Jayden Daniels as a prospect. I did prefer Drake May's ceiling, but I was happy with either one. I'm just overall super happy with the Commanders draft. Washington had 3 second-round picks. At 36, the Commies went defensive tackle Jerzon Newton. He played at Illinois for 4 years. He had 73 tackles and 5 sacks over his first 2 seasons in Champaign. Newton had 62 tackles and 5.5 sacks in 2022, and he's coming off of 52 tackles and 7.5 sacks last season. Newton was a consensus All-American, and he was expected to be a first-round pick. I think Washington taking him really does signal that either Jonathan Allen or Daron Payne won't be on the roster in 2025, which makes a lot of sense. Now, there were 3 picks that I really loved from Washington. The first was Mikey Sainristil. You might know who he is. If you don't, you probably remember a play he made. Sainristil picked off Michael Penix Jr. on 4th down and returned it 81 yards to essentially ice the national championship for Michigan. He actually played wide receiver for 3 seasons for the Wolverines. He only had 37 catches for 539 yards and 5 touchdowns. In 2022, he was moved to cornerback and had 58 tackles and 1 interception, coming off of Max Duggan in the college football playoff. This past season, Sainristil was a first-team All-American. After he had 44 tackles and 6 interceptions, 2 he returned for a touchdown. I like him a lot, and after drafting him, Washington took another guy I can't wait for, Ben Sinnott. He redshirted his first season at Kansas State, and he only had 2 catches for 15 yards in 2021. Then he had a bigger role for the next 2 seasons and was first-team All-Big 12 both years. Sinnott had 447 yards and 4 touchdowns in 2022, and is coming off of a career year with 676 yards and 6 touchdowns. The Commanders also had 2 third-round picks. They took offensive tackle Brandon Coleman. I didn't know much about him before the draft at all. He actually grew up in Germany. He started playing offensive line for the first time as a senior in high school and actually played at Trinity Valley Community College the next year. He committed to TCU in 2020, and he started 34 games over 4 seasons. Coleman made starts at left tackle, left guard, and right guard. The third guy I really like is Luke McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey's little brother. He played quarterback at Nebraska for 2 2 years and decided to transfer to Louisville, but left very soon after to go to Rice instead. He started 3 games at QB for the Rice Owls in 2021 and then was moved to wide receiver in 2022. He had 700 yards and 6 touchdowns in his first season at wide receiver and had 963 yards and 12 touchdowns last season en route to being named first team All-AAC. Washington had 3 picks on day 3 and used them all on defensive guys. 2 were 5th rounders, Temple linebacker Jordan McGee and Washington safety Dominique Hampton. McGee started at Temple in 2019 and became a starter in 2021. He led the Owls with 86 tackles in 2022 and 80 tackles last season. He had 235 tackles and 8 sacks in his collegiate career. Now, Hampton was your ever so common 6-year college player. He redshirted in 2018 and got a COVID year. Hampton only played in 9 games over his first 3 seasons in Seattle before playing 36 over his last 3. He finished his college career with 189 tackles and 2 interceptions. Both came in 2023. The Commies' final pick of the draft was Javonte Jean-Baptiste in the 7th round. He played college ball for 6 years too, 5 at Ohio State. Last season at Notre Dame, he had 47 tackles and 4 sacks. I did like the Commanders' draft. They filled spots on defense that were needed, and more importantly, they improved the offense. The development of Jayden Daniels is a priority, and offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury is going to have a big role. He was the head coach of the Cardinals for 4 seasons, where he coached Kyler Murray. Cliff helped develop Case Keenum at Houston, Johnny Manziel at Texas A&M, Baker Mayfield, Davis Webb, and Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech, and Caleb Williams at USC last season. He has plenty of experience with young quarterbacks. This offseason, Washington signed tight end Zach Ertz, who played in Arizona for Cliff. He's a veteran presence just to catch passes. Terry McLaurin's entering his 6th year in the pros. He's had 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons and is the clear number 1. That leaves Jahan Dotson as the 2. He just didn't make a jump in his sophomore season. He had about 500 yards again and 3 less touchdowns, but he did have 14 more receptions. And honestly, Eric Bieniemy's offense really struggled last season, and you can chalk up a lot of bad stats from these guys just to that. Brian Robinson Jr. didn't carry the ball as many times as he probably should have. He ended up with 733 yards and 5 touchdowns, and he'll share the backfield with Austin Eckler now. Eckler had a down season in 2023, but he had 25 rushing touchdowns over the 2-year span before it. If there is a big concern for the development of Jayden Daniels, it's the offensive line. Right guard Sam Cosmi was great last season, but right tackle Andrew Wiley really struggled. He played for the Chiefs previously, as did new left guard Nick Allegretti. Washington also signed center Tyler Biadasz, who played on the Cowboys last season. The Commanders also signed defensive end Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler Jr. from Dallas, linebacker Bobby Wagner, and wide receiver Olamide Zaccheaus, who all played for new Commanders head coach Dan Quinn elsewhere. He's bringing in his guys, and I support it. No matter how good the roster is, the quarterback has to be good to win. Washington took Jayden Daniels for a reason and have to develop him now, but it's hard for me to trust the process. Like Jayden Daniels, Robert Griffin III was the 2nd overall pick. Washington took him in the 2012 NFL Draft, and his rookie season was special. He won Offensive Rookie of the Year, helped the Redskins finish the regular season on a 7-game winning streak, and won the NFC East. Washington lost to the Seahawks in the wild card, and RG3 re-injured his LCL that he hurt in Week 14. He had surgery on his LCL and ACL after the season and was never the same. He had a disappointing 2013, and then in 2014, he dislocated his ankle, struggled, and didn't play for Washington again. Dwayne Haskins was drafted 15th overall in 2019. He only ended up playing 13 games in Washington before being released during his 2nd season in the pros. Washington has just not had a good track record developing quarterbacks, and I really hope that changes this time around with Jayden Daniels. A new era is here post Dan Snyder, and maybe this time it'll be different.